Hello and welcome to this quick start guide to using the Chicago Manual of Style, or CMS, the citation convention used by professional historians. I am your social sciences librarian, T. Gorblich, and if you have any questions at all about this quick start guide, please feel free to contact me at my contact information that is now on the screen. This quick start guide is going to cover how to create a CMS EndNote citation for an academic book, an academic article, an historical newspaper article, as well as an archival source. Now, there are many other types of citations you need to understand with respect to CMS, but this quick start guide is only going to cover these types of materials here on the screen, and these are rather popular types of materials that need to be cited. So this quick start guide is just that. It's a quick start guide to getting you familiar with how to use CMS. And then I am also going to provide some additional CMS resources for you. Okay, I'm going to start with showing you how to create an EndNote citation for an academic book. Now, what I have up on the screen right now is a book record from Summit. And this could be a book record from the actual library catalog as well, or you could be using the actual print book itself to come up with or locate the elements for creating the EndNote citation. Okay, but at this point I just want to point out to you the elements that you need to create that book citation. Okay, so the first thing that we need to identify is the author. In this case, it is Christopher J. Olson. And then we need to identify the title of the publication, which in this case is The American Civil War, A Hands-on History. And then we need to locate the place of publication. Now, unfortunately, in this particular record, we are not seeing the place of publication. So this is something we would have to refer to the actual book to find that place of publication. That should not be that complicated to look in the book to find the place of publication. All right, then we need the publisher, which in this case is Hill and Wang, and then we need the date of the publication, which in this case is 2006, and then we need the inclusive pages that we are using from the book. Okay, so those are the elements that you need to create a book citation for an EndNote in CMS style. Okay, now on the next screen we are going to put all of this criteria together, or all of these elements together, and come up with an EndNote citation for this particular item. Now that we have all of the elements and the criteria for creating the EndNote or footnote citation, we need to compile the citation. Now the first thing that you need to do is you need to obviously know what number EndNote or footnote this is. And then you are going to indent the first line and then identify or label the EndNote or footnote citation. In this case it is 1 and then it is superscript. So remember that. And then we list the author's name, starting with the first name, middle initial, and then the last name. In this case it's Christopher J. Olson. Then we have a comma, and then we italicize the title of the publication, The American Civil War, A Hands-on History. And then in parentheses we indicate the place of publication. In this case it is New York. I did find that out. And then we have the publisher, which is Hill and Wang, comma, and then the date or year of the publication, which is 2006 in this case. And then outside of the parentheses we have a comma and then the page number in question with respect to this note. Okay, so that is your basic EndNote or footnote citation for an academic book. Okay, let's say that this item was available electronically. The only thing that would change in this citation now is how you're viewing the item. That would be an addition to the citation. So you see here in the second citation, ProQuest eBrary. ProQuest eBrary is a collection of books that the library has electronically, and that's the provider. So they have their own sort of ebook interface that you would be viewing it from. So it would either be the title of the ebook reader or the title of the collection. In this case, it's the ProQuest eBrary. And the library actually has many other electronic collections. So you may be calling it something else. Don't get stuck with the idea or the concept that it is always going to be the ProQuest eBrary. The ProQuest eBrary is a very large ebook collection that the library has, but it's not the only one. So it may be something else. Now, with the last citation here, this is if you find something freely available on the internet. Okay? You would need to then include the URL and then the date the item was accessed. This is if it's a book. Okay? And we have found it freely available on the internet. We then provide the URL and then the date it was accessed. Okay? So these are some simple instructions for creating an endnote or footnote citation for an academic book. Now let's move into creating an endnote or footnote citation for an academic article. This is an article record from JSTOR. However, this article record is very similar to any other article record you might find in any other database that you're doing research in. And that's because it has all of the components that you need to create your citation in CMS. So first of all, it has, of course, the author's names, and then it has the title of the article, and then it has the publication the article appears in, it has the volume number, and it has the issue number as well as the date, and then the page numbers that the article appears in the publication. And then also, because we are viewing this electronically, we have the URL that is necessary for this citation. So let's go ahead now and create the CMS citation for an endnote or footnote for an academic article. And now we are ready to create our endnote or footnote citation for our academic article. So the first thing we are doing is establishing what number this endnote or footnote is. In this case, it is 1. Then we will indent, list the number, which in this case again is number 1, and then list the authors or author. In this case, it is authors, Joshua DeLome and John N. Singer. And if it was just one author, we would just have the comma after Joshua DeLome, and then go into the title of the article and put quotation marks around the article. In this case, it is the interest convergence principle and the integration of Major League Baseball. And then put a comma before the end quote. And then list the publication the article appears in. In this case, it is the Journal of Black Studies. And then we indicate the volume number, in this case 41, then a comma, and then the issue number, which in this case is 2. And obviously, if there was no issue number for this volume, or the volumes don't have issues, issue numbers that is, then you just don't worry about including it. It would just be Journal of Black Studies, volume 41, and then go into the year in parentheses, in this case 2010, and then a colon, and then the page number in question with respect to the endnote or footnote. And then a comma, and because we are viewing this item electronically, we include the URL that is associated with this article. Okay, and again, that is found on the record, not the URL window at the top of the screen. So use the URL associated with the article in the article record. Now, if you were creating the citation from the print version of the article, then you would just end it with the page number at the end. You obviously would not have to include a URL. So that is what you need to do to create a citation for an endnote or a footnote for an academic journal article. Now, moving into creating an endnote or footnote citation for an historical newspaper article, we are now seeing on the screen a record from the ProQuest historical newspaper, the New York Times. And we still have all of the elements here on the screen that we need to use to create the CMS citation, minus the URL, which I will show you how to get to momentarily. So we have the author's name, John McCormick. We have the title of the article, Russian Stalling on Austria is Seen. And then we also have the name of the publication, the New York Times. Additionally, we need to include the name of the database or the collection this article is coming from, and in this case it is the New York Times 1923 to current file. And then we also need the date, which is June 3, 1947. And if we want to get to the URL that we're going to need to include in this, we just click on where it says abstract and details, and then when you get to that page you'll be able to scroll down and see the URL that you need to use to place in the citation. Again, you are not using the URL that is at the top of the screen in the URL window. Okay, you have to use specific URLs, and you can find the specific URL for this publication's article from the abstract and details section. Okay, so let's go ahead and create the citation for this article. Now, pulling all of this together and creating an endnote or footnote citation for an historical newspaper article, we start by, again, figuring out what note this is. So this is note 1 again. So we then indent, list the note number, superscript, and then we begin the citation with the author of the article, in this case John McCormick, and then we list the title in quotation marks, Russian Stalling on Austria is Seen, Moscow believed to regret treaty group and to seek retreat from it now, and then a comma, and then the end quote, and then we have the publication name, in this case the New York Times, and it is in italics, and then we list the collection that this is coming from with respect to the database, and in this case it is the 1923 to current file of the New York Times historical newspaper, and then that is in parentheses, and then we have a comma, and then the date of the article, in this case June 3, 1947, and then a comma, and then the specific URL for this article that you found by going into the abstract and details section of the record, and then in parentheses you will have the accessed date. Okay, now this again is for an authenticated database tool that you're getting this material from. Now let's say you found an article from the New York Times from recent times or from current times. Well, you would not have to list many of the things here on the screen. You would not have to list, obviously, that it's coming from the 1923 to current file. You would not have to list the special URL. In the case of finding something, for instance, on the New York Times website, you would list the URL that's at the top of the screen. Okay, so it would be a much more abbreviated version of this citation. But you are going to be using the New York Times historical newspapers and other historical newspapers from ProQuest quite a bit, so it's good to understand this version of the newspaper article citation. Now, for a citation for a print newspaper article, basically you have everything except what's after 1947 in the digital version. Okay? And then again, you don't have the 1923 to current file. So they're very similar. All right, so this is creating an endnote or footnote citation for an historical newspaper article. Now, moving on to creating an endnote or footnote citation for an archival source. First of all, an archival source is something that you are actually finding in the physical form within an archive. And typically the archive will be associated with a library. Now, there are many different kinds of archival sources that you're going to come across. But the three on the screen right now are sort of typical archival specimens. And the specimen on the left is a portion of a letter. The item in the middle is a photograph of some generals during the Civil War. And then on the right, we have a map of the battlefield of Fredericksburg in 1862 during the Civil War. So there are a number of things that you need to know in order to create the citation. And that's what we're going to take a look at on the next screen. And here is the criteria for creating an endnote or footnote citation for an archival source. Now, I'm doing something a little bit different here because I've color-coded the criteria, and I've left the color coding on the screen. Now, the color coding is just simply to show you where one criteria ends and the other criteria begins. Okay? So hopefully that will help guide you when you're creating this type of citation. So first up, we have the title and information about the item itself, the creator, the page or section that the item appears in, and then the date of the item. So you're not always going to have the page or section that something appears in, because it may be a photo, it may be a map, it may be, a one-page letter, so it won't have a page or a section. And then you have the collection the item is part of, the collection in the archive that the item is part of, and then a sub-collection if there is any. And then you're going to have the physical location in the collection, as in a box or folder number. And then you'll have the repository library and the location of the library. So if we consider the map from the previous screen, that is a map of the battlefield of Fredericksburg, drawn by Benjamin L. Blackford, December 13th, 1862. Okay? So that satisfies the title, creator, and the date information. And then it's part of the American Civil War Battlefield Maps collection in Box 42, Folder 18 of the Library of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Now, the American Civil War Battlefields Map collection and Box 42 and Folder 18 are not the collection and the actual location. I made that up because I wanted to give you specifics with respect to an example of the collection name and then the box that it might appear in or the folder it might appear in. Okay, so you're going to have that information though when you are looking at an archival source, and it may not appear in a box or folder either. It may just be part of a collection, and that's it. So this has been an example of creating an endnote or footnote citation for an archival source. And here are a few locations where you can get much more information about using the Chicago Manual of Style. Now, just a brief note on citation generators. As you've done research, you've probably noticed that you will have links to where you can get the citations of the resources that you're actually using or looking at. These are citation generators, and students often look to these. However, you have to use these with caution because the citations that are generated are often inaccurate. So you need to know the basics to make sure you are using the correct citation at all times. So that is why you need to know the basics of utilizing, in this case, the Chicago Manual of Style. And then you'll, again, be assured of always making sure that you have the correct citation. And this has been a quick start guide to using the Chicago Manual of Style, or CMS, the citation convention used by professional historians. Now, if you have further questions about the Chicago Manual of Style, please feel free to contact me at my contact information that is listed on the screen. I hope this quick start guide was useful, but please, again, if you have questions, let me know.